Right around Huntley, he reaches, oh, that ball's out, that's live! Back the other way, Sam Hubbard! The Cincinnati Kid! Hubbard's got a convoy! Chased by Andrews! At the 30, the 20, he will score!
To the end zone, down the field, and it is deflected, and gone! Touchdown! A.J. Green!
Goes back to throw. Men are coming late. Looks right down the middle. There's Eddie Brown. He has it at the 35 to the 30. He may go 10-5 touchdown.
Now the Bengals Super Bowl chances rest on his right foot. The kick is up. It is good.
Corey Dillon, he's gone. The knockout punch, you're looking at it. 65 yards.
And a back to throw as the blitz is on. Goes long, intended for Collinsworth. He has it down to the 20, touchdown. And Chris Collinsworth.
Throwing the long ball. Deep down the field. Chad Johnson's got it. Touchdown, Cincinnati.
Look at Chase go. Oh my goodness, what a gear he just found. Case for the touchdown. Wow, Chase is on the case.
It is no fluke. It is a fact. The Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Super Bowl 56. The play clock at 3. Shotgun snap. Carr throws into traffic. Intercepted. Jermaine Pratt has the football.
Yeah.
Coffin nails.
Bam, bam, bam. How about that?
How about that, Craig? We get a win. We win a nail biter. This felt for the longest time of this one like a game that the Bengals just don't win. But we're here on a Monday night talking about a 27-20 victory. The Bengals went down to Dallas, picked up the win at the end over the Cowboys. 27-20 is your final. I'm joined by Craig Sandlin for the postgame as always. Craig, how are we doing? Feeling pretty good. I don't know if this helps us or not, but when the games are on, I'm certainly rooting for the Bengals. I'll tell you that.
I mean, you can't help but root for them, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you might as well try to have some fun. And what better way to win a ball game by having your own punt blocked and giving yourself an extra possession. Listen, we've been saying all year, find a way to win, and guess what? They found a way to win. So can't complain about it too much. At the end of the day, we'll take this dub. And like I said in the chat, Jacob, what do you think? Should that blocked punt be the thing that catapults the Bengals back into the playoff picture?
Hey, look, you said it, not me, so I put it as the last line on the ticker here today. Back door? Is it cracked open? Is it at least not locked and we just have to find it? I don't know, but we'll get to it as we go. But
Stop it. In the words of Denny Green, the Bengals are who we thought they were.
They are. No,
like they're still not a good football
No,
team.
And that's exactly what we learned tonight. And this game was only on prime time because they started doodling forward about 2 months ago. Otherwise, these two bad teams would have been flexed out. So the only reason we're even here at almost midnight on the East Coast on a Monday night is because the animators at Disney Plus were hard at work for that Simpsons broadcast. This is not a good Cowboys team. A 27-20 win in Dallas over the Cowboys. If you told me that preseason, I would have probably had that as a top 3 or 4 win on the schedule for us. Talking about a playoff hunt, playing against a team probably at the top of the NFC, but with the way the seasons have gone for both of these respective squads so far, certainly not the case for either team. I saw a graphic before the game that with a win, the Bengals had a 3% chance to make the playoffs, and with a win, the Cowboys had a 2% chance to make the playoffs. So, a real battle of juggernauts in either conference. Maybe a Super Bowl preview, at least mathematically not eliminated yet. Well, the Cowboys might be now. But, yeah, the Bengals played a game where they really gave away their opportunities to win this one, and they were continually gifted with second and third and fourth and fifth chances. And finally, they capitalized on one. Jamar Chase makes a man miss and scores down the sideline, a story we've told in Cincinnati many, many times since we drafted him. And the Bengals pick up the win the only way the Bengals know how. Timely sack from Trey Hendrickson, a 370-yard passing game from Joe Burrow, and 180 yards from Jamar Chase. How else have the Bengals won games this year? They win games because their star players play like star players. And I know it hasn't resulted in what we've wanted this season to be, but I do think that's important because if you look around the league, and even if you look in Cincinnati, there's a guy who people were asking about whether or not he was active tonight based on the production in the game. T. Higgins was active tonight. He played as much of the game as I expected him to play in terms of when I saw him in there. And he was targeted 5 times, 2 catches for 23 yards. When you look around the league and even at T. Higgins, a lot of the elite talent in this league disappears for some games. And I know Jamar had the questions earlier this year about whether or not he can do it without T. Higgins. I think he put that to bed towards the end of that stretch where he went off at the last couple of games there without T. Higgins. These guys, for the Bengals, they're star players. They don't disappear. At least not for long stretches. These guys are consistent, and they're consistently really, really good, especially Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has been nothing short of incredible this year. I know he missed a couple throws today. The interception was certainly not pretty, but that's a guy who gave the Cowboys – what did the Cowboys end up with sack-wise? The Cowboys had 2 sacks on the day. I believe 2 sacks on the day on Joe Burrow, one of them which shouldn't have even counted with a face mask on the takedown there. And they pressured him so many more times. His ability to extend plays and find the receivers downfield is just unbelievable, and it's something we talk about every single week. I'm sure we'll have some plays for you guys on Tuesday. But the way these star players continue to uplift the roster around them, I know it hasn't resulted in wins every step of the way, but it's great to see that from the few cornerstone pieces that we think we have in Cincinnati.
Yeah, Burrow with his 4th straight game over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns in each of those games, 2nd longest streak in NFL history for that combination of stats. I mean, it really is a shame that this Bengals team has floundered what is really a historic year out of Joe Burrow. And laugh as you were saying that because the TV was showing Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase planting some donuts in each other's face and rubbing the icing all over it. So
at least they're having fun.
At least they're having fun now, right? I mean, Jamar Chase wasn't having fun earlier this year. Safe to say, I think he had fun tonight. 14 catches, 177 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You mentioned the game sealer 40-yarder, making a man miss and getting to the end zone. Look, Jacob, I said at the intro, like this still is not a good overall team, but the truth of the matter is that offensively, this team is good enough to compete with any team in the league. And when you get a defensive game where they hold an opponent to 20 points, even if it is the Cooper Rush-led Dallas Cowboys, who came into tonight with the 30th overall ranked PFF offensive grade in the NFL and the 31st graded run game in the NFL, who then go off for 18 carries and 131 yards, 7.3 yards per pop out of Rico Dowdle. Doesn't really give me a whole lot of confidence moving forward. I realize, like you mentioned, a couple key plays at the end of the game with Trey Hendrickson finally getting home on a sack to wrap it up. But look, I think if we're being honest with ourselves, the key pieces here is that Joe Burrow wasn't seriously injured on that sack. That's the most important thing that happened tonight, is that Joe Burrow wasn't seriously injured. And, they pick up the dub. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm not going to sit here and act like Jacob's not a weird enough fan to go into off the bench tomorrow morning calling for the playoff berth to be back on the table. But
no, I said we got to win the next 2 before I do that. This is one.
Great. I'm happy. I'm happy we get one more week before you really dump off the deep end. But look, a lot of obvious deficiencies still. I think the Simpsons broadcast on that first CeeDee Lamb touchdown had Homer Simpson in at quarterback. I think Homer Simpson legitimately could have thrown that touchdown pass to CeeDee Lamb. He was so wide open on Mike Hilton, but I tip the cap. They found a way to win, even if it was handed to them by a special teams blunder, but it is what it is. You just pick up the dub and you keep the momentum going.
Absolutely. Never apologize for wins, especially when you're sitting at 4-8 and you need every single one that you can for locker room morale. But that's what I wanted to start with. I think the obvious point in the game, and I think the only way to sum it up really is what happened. The chat was confused. I was confused. I think even you were confused for a second, and then they panned over to Zach Taylor, and he was clearly confused as well. So I'm not sure anyone really knows what exactly happened or knew at the time what exactly happened on that last fourth down punt for the Bengals, looking to send it away, try to pin the Cowboys back deep in their own territory after a back-breaking stop by the Cowboys defense, and the punt's blocked, and Bengals fans, all of us kind of in unison, groan as it's happening again. You're losing in another impossible way. But this time, the bounce goes our way. Cowboys defender touches it past the line of scrimmage. At that point, it's a live ball, just like any punt, recovered by the Bengals. And then a first down from the spot, which was coincidentally about 10 to 15 yards short of the original line to gain. Originally, with my lack of understanding of the rules, it seems, I thought that they were just going to call John Meta down right there. And I was like, oh, this whole fun play was for nothing. We're 10 yards short of the first down. But alas, Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense came back onto the field, went down and did what they had to do to score the game-winning touchdown. I mean, maybe I'm not as much of a ball watcher as I thought, Craig, but I don't remember that happening ever. I can't put my finger on a play like that happening, at least not that I remember.
No, I mean, I think it's similar to what you see with blocked field goals all the time, where if it gets blocked and it goes past the line of scrimmage, you see the entire special teams defense, whatever you want to call them, kind of like waving each other off. But in that scenario, obviously, I think the Cowboys special teamer thought that he could get it and return it a little bit and pick up some extra yards, but wasn't able to handle it and ended up in Young Meta's hands. And next thing you know, Jamar Chase is getting loose down the sideline. So, I don't know. What happened is exactly what you just described. I legitimately didn't know in the moment. I was literally, I think I sent a message in the chat saying, okay, well, the Cowboys just get the ball at that point.
That's what I
thought. No, once the Cowboys touched it, it's a live ball. And, I appreciate the help to whoever it was on the Cowboys return team that touched that. Cause definitely wasn't looking good with Brandon Aubrey's leg and them potentially getting the ball on the plus side of the field.
Yeah, just an unbelievable series of events there. And I think it wouldn't be crazy to say that maybe the first bounce that went our way this year. It feels like those 50-50 balls in games, especially like this. I mean, I know the Cowboys aren't a contender, which is what most of our close losses have been. But all of those close losses, 1-7, now 2-7 in one-score games this year, all of those losses have been in record-breaking, heartbreaking fashion. And this one was stepping up to go that way again, and then finally a bounce our way. I wish we could use a play like this in a season where we were still alive. I mean, imagine the vibes to beat the Cowboys on a play like this had we beaten the Steelers last week and we were still right in the thick of this whole thing. I mean, I guess I'm still the one saying that we are still alive, so maybe that does.
Yeah, what do you mean if we were still alive?
Yeah, you're right.
Nate just put it in our chat. There's a scenario where the Bengals are still in this. If Denver goes 1-3 and then the Miami and the Colts go 2 for 2 or worse, the Bengals are right back in this, and I hate to break it to you, Jacob, but the Broncos last 4 weeks, they have 3 games against the Chargers, the Bengals, and the Chiefs.
Yeah, no, I know.
This feels ripe for a Jacob Tissett, are we dead yet take, and I don't know.
We might not be, Craig. We might not be, and that's the fun part. That's the fun part is that there's still a little bit of life, and I think the main takeaway and something that we've talked about really week in and week out with this football team is that as long as Joe Burrow's at the helm of this team, there is life. And there's at least a little bit of a hope that no matter what happens, you have a chance, because we know that Joe Burrow just needs to sneak in. He just needs a chance. He just needs a ticket to the dance, and he can beat anyone. He can go toe-to-toe with anyone. And I know the defense is terrible, and the special teams were down to a guy that hadn't made a kick this year until tonight. But look, when Nine's playing quarterback for my team, there's a chance. And that's why I think even with all the deficiencies of the Bengals this year, Bengals fans have been holding on to the playoff hope and not focusing on the draft yet. And it's because we know that as bad as it gets, as many losses as stack up, as long as there's still a 1% chance we make the playoffs, there's an equivalent chance that we win the Super Bowl. Because as long as we get in the dance, I'll take Joe Burrow right there with everybody. Look, if we get in, it's an even playing field. I think it's a lot harder for the Bengals to get in than for them to win the Super Bowl at this point.
Okay.
Once you rip off all these wins and you're in there, you're hot. Defense is playing better.
Look at that. Yeah, at that point you would have the momentum. You're right. They
That's
would
what I'm
have the
saying.
momentum.
That's what I'm
but
saying.
At the end of the look, I think once you get to the playoffs, and we've seen this year in and year out, is that once you get to the playoffs, yes, there are two things that make you Super Bowl contenders, and that is having an elite quarterback, which the Bengals have, but also having an elite defense. And the Bengals do not have that
to say the least. To say the least.
Yeah, not even close. And look, AJ and Big Justice were in the game, or were at the game tonight at AT&T Stadium bringing the boom, which is good because the Bengals defense sure was not bringing the boom. And to steal some words from Big Cass of the WWE, for those that know, there's only one word to describe this defense, and I'm going to spell it out for you, and it's SAWFT, soft. And it is bad. You watch this game and you see so many missed tackles. You see so many guys out of position. Mike Hilton, where are you going? Jermaine Pratt, missed tackles. What missed tackles? I didn't see any missed tackles. Open your eyes, brother. CD Lamb should have been tackled 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, goes off for 43 because Jermaine Pratt tries to arm tackle him behind the line of scrimmage. It just, time and time again, this defense shows me why, even though if they find a way to get into this playoffs, I have no confidence at all in them being able to potentially make a run in the playoffs, because you look at who they'd have to play. And ultimately, all of these teams have shown the ability to slow down the Bengals offense, with the exception of like Pittsburgh. Like you look at the Chiefs have been able to slow down the Bengals offense. Now the Bengals have somehow been able to slow down the Chiefs offense too. So it goes both ways, but I don't know, Jacob. I think at this point, the Bengals schedule lines up to have a chance to get in for sure, because you have the Titans next week and then you've got the Browns after that. And then you've got the biggest game of the year that's remaining on the schedule, and that's the Broncos coming to Paycor Stadium on December 29th, a game that I'm going to be in Cincinnati for and might just have to find my way down to Paycor if that's the case.
Love that.
If they're not in it, then I'm not going to bother. But if it's playoff implications, I might bear the weather and go to my first NFL game in several years. I don't know. Maybe me and you can go together, and then we can just find a way to do the post-game show from Paycor somewhere. I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Yeah, I don't know. At the end of the day, I find it really hard to believe that with this defense.
No, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And there's no reason to turn the page on this team, because it really is exactly what we said they were all year, is what we saw again tonight. But it's crazy with all the missed tackles you said. The CeeDee Lamb touchdown, obviously one of the uglier coverages you'll ever see. Mike Hilton just stands still and CeeDee Lamb runs right by him. A lot of bad plays today for the Bengals defense. But I titled the defensive segment on the countdown, Defense Stepped Up, because when we needed him to in this game, the defense did. And there was a stretch in there where they had the Cowboys offense doing nothing. Turnover on downs, punt, field goal to end the game. That's really, really good defense. That's what you need to do when your offense consecutively can't move the ball, can't get the touchdown to win the game, can't get into field goal range. The defense had mistakes today, and we know they're going to have those because we know the personnel we're dealing with as Bengals fans. But when push came to shove, these guys finally, for maybe the first time this year, stepped up when the Bengals actually needed them to help get a win. Joe Burrow failed twice to get the ball in scoring position to win this game. The defense picked him up and got the ball back, and when he was given another chance, what did he do? He went down and scored. He got the ball to Jamar Chase. They scored a touchdown. They won the game. This defense did what they needed to do today, and that's not... It's not something that I think we should gloss over. I know, I'm sure come Tuesday, we're going to have a 3-minute cut up of missed tackles. Certainly the Mike Hilton blown coverage in there on the key plays. It's not going to be a fun show, but even earlier in the game, after Dallas scores that opening drive touchdown, after that point, the Bengals defense gets a red zone interception, forces a field goal after a short field from a turnover on downs, punt to end the first half. That is great defense. And I know it's fallen apart at different points in time, and at least in this game, it kind of all compounded into a couple drives where they were able to, kind of string everything together and get some points when they probably shouldn't have. But the Bengals put together many good drives of defense today. I'm not, going to sit here and say it's a huge building block for this defense, and I'm back in on Lou, and we're trending in the right direction, and yada, yada, yada. I'm not saying all that. I do think it's refreshing to see this defense fight a little bit for the first time all year. We haven't seen this. We haven't seen them go out there and get stops when we need them to, and they finally did tonight, and I think that means something.
Well, I mean, this feels like that October stretch when we got all jacked up and thought that the defense was back on track after the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns game. The truth of the matter is that this defense isn't good, but they're good enough to hold terrible offenses to mediocre performances. I mean, realistically, this Cowboys offense against a good defense should not be putting up 20 points in prime time. Just like the New York Giants put up 7 against this defense. I think, not a great performance, but good enough against a bad team. Same thing with the Browns.
We play too many good teams in between the bad teams that I lose faith in the defense by the time we play the next bad team, so I'm shocked again.
Well, you got a nice little string of 3 bad teams here with the Cowboys, Titans, and Browns.
I'm going to be going into that Broncos game talking about shutting them out. We're going to look good these next 3 weeks. I'm going to be, this defense, Bo Nix can't throw on Lou. I'm going to be talking crazy in 3 weeks. I just can forecast it now.
My God. There was one, bright spot. I thought that Joseph Asai yet again looked decent in his role. Got a sack for the 3rd straight game. He's seeing increased opportunities, and they moved him around a little bit on the D line tonight, give him more opportunities. They moved him inside. That sack that he got, he was lined up in the 5 technique on the inside, going up against the guard. I thought that was intriguing, and seeing how they're using him. Miles Murphy felt like he was on the field a little bit more this game as well compared to Sam Hubbard. So look, there are certainly some bright spots and some building blocks that are around. I just think that the difficult part is that it's really hard to teach fundamentals at this point in the season, right? Like those are the things that you need to build on through the offseason and throughout training camp and get the fundamentally sound piece. You're not going to get fundamentally sound magically in December. And so that's the difficult part for this defense, is that they continue to have missed tackles and missed tackles and missed tackles over and over again. And that leads to situations where this offense is put in position where they have to be the one to carry the defense, because the defense is missing tackles and are the ones that are putting the offense in position to need to have to score over and over and over again. And so, tonight, yet again, it was good enough. They held the Cowboys to 20 points. But the truth of the matter is that PFF still has 7 missed tackles right now. Allocated to the game, and that's not going to get it done. And, ultimately one of which, the Jermaine Pratt one, ended up going for 46 yards more than it should have. And so those are the big plays that ultimately kill you, and it's all because of fundamentals, and that's not something that you're likely going to be able to teach and change at this point in the season.
No, and I think that the fact that we're still talking about fundamentals at this point in the season circles back to the coaching discussion that we always get to at this point when we talk about the defense. Look, I say it every time I start this point because I don't want people to think that I'm so sour on Lou as a coach in the NFL, or I think that he's some terrible defensive coordinator that's making this team worse or resulting in losses. It's not what I think at all. I've been a Lou defender really the entire year, but when week after week there's no improvement and there's a stubbornness to keep your guys in there. Dejon Anthony, inactive today. With what we've seen from the safeties so far this year, there's no explanation to me why you have a young player like that inactive in a game like this. You have to be getting these guys reps at the late point in a lost season. Or maybe not a lost season, we're still saying we're in it, but at the late points in what seems like a lost season, or at least a drastically underwhelming season, you absolutely have to get these young guys reps. And I think that's really important to see what you have on this roster, because you have to know what holes are bigger issues that you have to address. If you can see some young guys in these next 5 weeks take some steps, show you some things you're willing to buy in on, then maybe you change your philosophy for the offseason, where you draft versus where you attack free agency, the level in which you add to each different position group. I think seeing what you have in the locker room is crucial right now. I don't think the Bengals are doing that, especially on defense. And I think at some point that does have to fall on Lou Anarumo. I think he wants to keep his guys in there, the guys that he trusts the most. And at this point, it's not the young guys, and I don't even think it's the best players. I think he's just falling back on a level of consistency. And if these guys don't have the upside, I'd rather take the gamble on some of the younger guys. For him to go to the press conference, Lou that is, and say that Geno Stone and Von Bell are his guys, and he's planning on riding with them for the rest of the season. Really? What have you seen this season so far that makes you think that?
To be fair, Von Bell only played 8 snaps tonight, Jacob.
Okay, well, that's good then. That's good.
Jordan Battle got 52 of the 60 snaps.
That's really good.
Obviously, Geno Stone was in there for all 60, but his PFF grade, 81.1 overall PFF grade for Geno Stone tonight.
Holy cow.
Probably, I'd have to double check, but probably his best performance.
I don't think you have to double check.
Certainly as a Bengal, but
yeah.
But I was going to think of his career, but nonetheless,
he did pick off Burrow twice last year, so maybe that one.
No, literally the last time is it looks like a 91.1 against Cincinnati week 2 last year.
Yeah, no, that checks out.
So, but it did look, again, there are some pieces that feel like they should combine for a better defense. It's just that you have so many lacking pieces, and there were other podcasts out there that were talking this week about how now's the time, now that they're out of it, that some of these players are going to start to step up, and all of a sudden they're going to look like real all-pro defensive players because nothing means anything anymore. And now when it means nothing, they're going to show up. And Geno Stone was one of those names that was thrown out a lot, and here we are. But look, I mean, Geno Stone had a really good game. Jermaine Pratt graded out really well so far. Marco Wilson, I thought, stood out a little bit as we were watching the game too, in terms of some coverage there that he looked like he was playing decently well for a late season add to the roster. So, it sucks that you have to be playing around with lineups right now and figuring out what's going to be your best lineup out there. But the truth of the matter is that at some point it had to happen. And so if that means that in week 14, we finally get 90% snaps out of Jordan Battle, then so be it. Better late than never. And if Jordan Battle can show some promise going into next season, it will make me feel a whole lot better having him go out there week in and week out versus having to watch Von Bell go out there and get burned. So
will it make me feel better if Jordan Battle goes out there and puts up good film for these next 5 weeks, getting most of the snaps? Absolutely. I'll feel great about the future. But it'll also make me really pissed off that we were all asking for this in the preseason and they didn't do it until now, and it's going to help this team play better. Yeah, there's going to be part of that too, and I think that's going to come back to maybe the stubbornness of this staff. If you put a lot of these guys in that the fans have been clamoring for forever, and they outplay the guys that you were, hanging on in there, maybe there's even more of a turn from the outside perception on these coaches. Maybe that's something that's seeping into their mind as well. I don't know, but certainly not the season we've wanted to see from the defense at all. They put together a decent game tonight, hold a Cowboys offense to a middling performance, I guess you could say. But just the second 100-yard rusher for the Cowboys on the season came tonight in Rico Dowdle. So still a lot of holes on this Bengals defense that have to be fixed. I don't think there's many changed conversations on that side of the ball, but it is just nice to get a win. I think the side of the ball that maybe doesn't warrant the conversation, but I think we still need to keep talking about it, is the offense. And I know it's only 27 points tonight, and this Cowboys defense isn't what this Cowboys defense has been in the past. They're one of the worst in the entire league. But this offense looked fine tonight. I mean, you obviously would want to see more out of T. Higgins. That's obviously something you want and the Bengals need if they're going to beat any teams much better than the Cowboys. But Chase Brown, unable to get really going in the run game, just 4 yards per carry on 14 carries. But to add 65 yards in the receiving game, and I consider most of those an extension of the run game in terms of the dump-offs and most of those yards coming after the catch for Chase Brown, I think he's turning into just such an exciting player for this offense. And I think I'm pretty close to throwing him in there with Burrow, Jamar, and T in terms of offensive skill players that I'm excited to build around for the future. I don't know why Chase Brown's not the running back in that group. I think he's incredibly exciting, and the versatility is awesome. I think running back 2 is certainly a need this offseason, strictly for the body, but nothing against Chase Brown whatsoever. I think he can be the running back for this Bengals team for a long time. He gets glossed over a lot when talking about bright spots on this Bengals team this year. You go Joe Burrow, you go Jamar Chase, you go Trey Hendrickson, and you move on. Chase Brown needs to be talked about because what he's doing this year was not expected from basically anyone, and he's doing it at an incredibly consistent level ever since he took over as the running back 1.
Yeah, he's bringing something that the Bengals have lacked from the running back position for a number of years now, and that's explosiveness. And you saw it on the touchdown where he got free and was able to run away and get into the end zone and tiptoe down the line. That's something that this Bengals team hasn't had in recent years. And I know that everybody loves to pile on how well Joe Mixon has been playing in Houston, and extremely happy for Joe Mixon, but Chase Brown and Joe Mixon are two very different backs. And Chase Brown is showing the fit that he has on this offense. And, Joe Mixon was very good at catching the ball out of the backfield. I felt like he just didn't really have that explosiveness to take advantage of the space that he had when he did catch it out in the flat. Chase Brown has that explosiveness to be able to do that. And he's been showing it now over the last several weeks that he can, in fact, be a cornerstone piece of this offense, and certainly doing it out of the backfield now. Over the last 5 weeks, Chase Brown has now racked up 28 catches out of the backfield. He's catching the ball, and he's certainly, like you mentioned, using that as an extension of the run game because, Lord knows this offensive line can't really run block. Over the last 5 games, going back to the Raiders game, 5 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown. Against Baltimore, 9 for 52. The Chargers, 5 for 57, 3 for 30 last week against Pittsburgh. And then obviously tonight he had 6 for 65 and a touchdown. I mean, from an all-purpose yards perspective, Chase Brown is giving you a lot out of this backfield, and he's bringing some explosiveness that the defenses are having to respect now, and that's allowing some of the wide receivers, I think, to get open a little bit deeper down the field. It's one thing for Joe Burrow to kind of dink and dunk, and Joe Burrow has in his career lived within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage and just kind of torn defenses apart by those quick hitters, and there's nothing wrong with that. But because of the respect that you have to give to Chase Brown, it opens it up for some of those deeper hits and getting into the open zones on the outside on Tampa coverages. And, that's something that the Bengals are going to continue to try and take advantage of. You saw it again today where Chase Brown ran that kind of delayed go route on the outside when they were running that fake screen. And Joe probably had him if he let him a little bit more, but underthrew the ball a little bit and was broken up. But those are the types of plays that you're going to continue to see out of Chase Brown, and he's showing now that he can catch the ball reliably, which was a concern coming into this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely was. That was kind of the thing that Bengals coaches, at least reportedly, told him in the offseason. You have to improve yourself as a pass blocker and as a receiver in order to stake any claim to this backfield in terms of a legitimate RB2 share or even creeping into the running back one. I still don't think that many people in the Bengals facility, obviously I'm not there, I can't speak for them, but it certainly seemed like the plan this season was Zach Moss RB1 the entirety of the year, and then the injury, and really before then, the production difference between the two made that mentality change. It's just been great to see this kind of production from a mid-round pick, because we've talked about it time and time again on this show. Not something the Bengals get a whole lot of is high-level production pretty close to immediately from a mid-round pick. So great to see that out of the running back position, and to keep that cheap, especially for Cincinnati on the rookie contract for a couple more years. Keep that running back position cheap and at a high level so you can focus on the other pieces of the offense. And speaking of other pieces of the offense, we're talking about paying a whole lot now. T. Higgins. I was thinking if the Bengals won this game, it was going to be a rah-rah, Jamar and T, best duo in the league, bring him back, 30 million's nothing, T needs to be here kind of show. But 370 passing yards for Joe Burrow. T. Higgins, 2 catches for 23 yards. Most of the chat tonight was asking if he was inactive. He wasn't seen today. Targeted 5 times, just the 2 catches. What happened to T. Higgins? You have to think they'd rotate coverages to Jamar Chase at some point tonight. 14 catches, 177 yards. And T. Higgins just unable to win opposite of Jamar Chase. A puzzling game for number 5 tonight. Something that's certainly going to be interesting to see in the film. But is there anything that you can think of now that could lead you to why he had such a quiet night against this Cowboys secondary that's certainly not one of the best?
Well, not one of the best, but it was also the first time that they had all 3 of their cornerbacks healthy. And, I know it's early and some of these stats will kind of update as things go on. But if you look at next-gen stats and the average separation for the receivers in tonight's game, Mike Gesicki, 3.68 yards. Andre Yoshivas, 3.63 yards. Drew Sample, 3.53 yards. Jamar Chase, 2.94 yards, but that's plenty for Jamar Chase. T. Higgins, average separation on routes, 1.35 yards. You have to wonder a little bit, is his hamstring bothering him still? Was it just a case of that his route tree was so bland that the Cowboys knew what he was doing every time? Deron Bland had him blanketed on that fade route that they tried to run on 4th and 2, or 3rd and 2. I'm sorry. So I just wonder if maybe you look at the route tree for Jamar Chase tonight, and it was super creative. He was all over the place. I don't know if you saw it yet, but T. Higgins obviously not so much, and Jamar's probably looks a little bit better than normal because he was targeted 18 times. So when you look at a route tree on in targets, then certainly it's going to be intriguing. But T. Higgins, on the other hand, probably not so much. And so whether it was a case of just the Cowboys knowing what T was going to do, or maybe T was slowed by injury, or whatever it may have been, tonight wasn't his night, and that's okay because Jamar picked him up. And I'd much rather have a healthy T and a healthy Jamar, and have Jamar catch the ball 14 times than have an unhealthy T and Jamar only get the ball 3 times like we were seeing earlier in the year. So that is one of the benefits that we've talked about of having 2 elite wide receivers, or at least 2 top tier wide receivers, is that defenses can't key on one guy like we were seeing early on this year without T, and it showed tonight. So even if they were trying to blanket T, Jamar stepped up.
Absolutely. And Jamar Chase, look, you can't talk about him enough. I think at some point we're going to realize that we might underappreciate Jamar Chase in Cincinnati just because of how much we as fans appreciate Joe Burrow, and we might not realize just how great he is. He's incredible. He is absolutely incredible. I don't think there's another receiver like Jamar Chase in the NFL, and I'm not saying there aren't other ones that are really good, or at least in the tier of Jamar Chase. I think there's not another receiver in the NFL that does what Jamar Chase does with the ball in his hands. It's unbelievable what he's able to do, both behind the line of scrimmage, rat catches, and also the most deep balls caught since he entered the league. It's crazy, the versatility of his receiving game. Craig, this is exactly what you were talking about today. What a beautiful route tree. And we've put plenty of these up this year and thrown up in our mouths about how uncreative Zach Taylor is with one of the best weapons in football. Today, Jamar Chase targeted 18 times, which certainly helps fill this thing up a little bit, like you said. But, man, that's what we've been asking for. And look what happens when you do it. I said it on the first play of the game when they ran the swing pass to Jamar Chase. I said, get the ball to your star players in space. Great things happen when you do that. It's amazing. It's not rocket science. Jamar Chase catches the ball 14 times. The Bengals offense moves. He scores 2 touchdowns. They win the football game. I don't think it's crazy. I know the defense has let him down a lot this year. We might be having to recalibrate our brains a little bit to what offensive stats result in wins. And a lot of times this year, great offensive stats that for the entire history of the NFL have resulted in wins haven't for the Bengals. But I think going into next year, and especially the future of this team, we got to look at some of the star players we have and realize a lot of the guys that are playing aren't going to be here for the future, or at least the next time that we're a legitimate contender. And I think to see Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow continue to put up the numbers that always result in wins outside of the 2024 Bengals, I think that's a great place to be. Because if they continue building and continue growing, who knows what the ceiling is for this duo. They're the best duo in the league, and if we can keep them together for a long time in Cincinnati, they might go down as one of the best duos, if not the best duo of all time. It's crazy what these two have, the connection they have, the point against the Chargers to find the open spot in the end zone. It's uncanny the way these two are connected on the field, and they do such a great job. And that's why you see Joe Burrow leading in every passing stat, and you see Jamar Chase leading in every receiver stat. Nate Seltzer, a great listener of ours, put it in the chat earlier in the show, and then now's a good time to update everyone on the Jamar Chase Triple Crown race. Important to keep an eye on that because, as he said earlier this week, it matters to him. And I think it should matter to Bengals fans, too. A receiver winning an award such as the Triple Crown that's so elusive. I know Cooper Kupp just did it a few years ago, but this isn't something that happens very often in football. And Jamar Chase is in a really, really good spot to do it this year. He leads receptions by 6. He leads yards by 150, and he has 6 more touchdowns than the next guy. That's called sitting pretty, Craig. Unbelievable stats for Jamar Chase this year, and he does it week in and week out.
I think the last one's the most impressive. The 6 more touchdowns than the next highest receiver in the league is pretty incredible. Yeah. It speaks a couple things. One is obviously it speaks to the level of confidence that Joe Burrow has in him. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. We saw it tonight, Joe Burrow getting rid of the ball before Jamar Chase even turns, the ball thrown to him before he even gets to the end zone, and yet Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase connect for that touchdown in the end zone on a beautiful timing route. And we saw it last week too with the scramble play where Joe Burrow found Jamar Chase in the back of the end zone on that jump pass, and they just happen to know where they are at all times. And you know me, I love to kind of keep up with the post game quotes coming out.
Yeah.
And an interesting one out of Joe Burrow is that he said about Jamar Chase, he deserves all he's gonna get and more. Hopefully we can play together for as long as we're in this league. I mean, legitimately, if you can keep those two together, and I realize that there needs to be complementary pieces, but if you can keep those two together, this Bengals offense can and should be good enough to compete for years to come. And so we'll revisit the exact thing I've said every game and every week for the last several weeks. This defense doesn't have to be great. They weren't great tonight, but they were good enough, and good enough is good enough to get you into the playoffs and to compete in the playoffs with this offense. So I don't know if you saw it or not, multiple post-game quotes and tweets coming out that are interesting.
Yeah, there's a big Joe Burrow one that I just saw. Yeah, and it's pretty exciting, I think, for Bengals fans if you're in the same boat as me in terms of wanting T. Higgins back in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow says to the media after the game that he's confident they'll be able to find a way to get T. Higgins back and that he is willing to do what it takes. He says when asked why he's confident, he offered, according to Paul Dehner Jr., a sly "we'll see" as the answer. So 4-8, maybe not the worst thing for the Bengals if they're going to bring back T. Higgins and go all in on this roster, because that's all we've ever wanted them to do is go all in on a window with a quarterback that we know is good enough to win this whole damn thing. And hopefully they commit to it. And I do think part of committing to it is to stop playing this whole NFL game with one arm tied behind your back and start devoting the money to it and pay the star players that you get in your building. Why do you draft a receiver at 33 if you don't want him to turn it into T. Higgins? And then why draft a receiver and hope they turn it into T. Higgins if you're never going to pay him? So it's the same conversation we have over and over again with Jesse Bates. You draft a player, they turn into an all-pro level player. Don't let those players leave the building. I think it's just as simple with T. Higgins. As long as the money makes sense.
Certainly loved it. Well, that's the thing. You'd love to make, to think that it makes sense, right? But at the end of the day, you have to put yourself in the position of, do I believe that the Brown family is going to put up $100 million a year plus, probably even more than that now, $120 million a year plus in order to keep these core three together? Because you've got Joe Burrow, who's going to be making $55 million a year. That's already knocked up. You've got Jamar Chase, who is playing his way into what feels like a $45 million a year contract, certainly 40 without a question. I don't think there's any question that he's going to be making over 40. But he's going to be the highest paid wide receiver come this next offseason. I don't think there's any question about that. And then to think that they have the liquidity to put money into escrow to guarantee T. Higgins the kind of money that is going to take to keep him in Cincinnati, I find that hard to believe. Now, Joe Burrow can easily convert some of the money that he's due into signing bonus or whatever to make it so that he's only owed 20 and maybe he just gets 30 up front or whatever happens. But that doesn't change the fact that Mike Brown has to be able to put potentially $300+ million into escrow this offseason in order to keep those two wide receivers,
Jamar's
if not more.
Insane.
100%. And again, we went through this offseason, but you have to look at Justin Jefferson's contract with the Minnesota Vikings as you're talking about what this is realistically going to look like. Justin Jefferson signed a 4-year, $140 million contract with $110 million guaranteed in early June, right? So if you're thinking about Jamar Chase is now going to be owed likely a larger contract than that, right? Justin Jefferson at 4 for $140 was $35 million a year.
Yeah.
You certainly have to believe that Jamar is going to be pushing $38-40 million a year when he goes and signs his contract this year. So if that's a 4-year $160 million contract, and even if he matches the guaranteed money, that's $110 million that the Brown family is going to have to put in escrow. And then to go out and sign T. Higgins, let's say he's a 4-year $110 million contract. A majority of that's going to have to be guaranteed as well. And now you're looking at $180 to $200 million in guaranteed money that has to be put in escrow 2 years after they signed Joe Burrow to a large contract where they had to put several $100 million into escrow too. That's the difficulty in trying to make this piece work. It's not about the annual salaries. I think you can make that work 100%, especially if you can draft better, but you can make that piece work. The piece that's challenging is thinking about Mike Brown having to find that $200 million to put into escrow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a huge hurdle, especially for a team like the Bengals. We know they're not cash rich, maybe don't even have that cash anywhere. So certainly tough to pull all those millions of dollars into escrow and put them in limbo right away, because that's really, at the end of the day, when the leaks about the negotiations about this summer broke down, it was all about guaranteed money concerns and getting that money into escrow for Jamar Chase and how all that was going to, play out this offseason. That's what held up the Bengals and Chase to an extension. Not money, not average per year, nothing like that. They were good on everything except for the guarantees and then getting the money in there on time, which is a really real shame that as an NFL franchise, we're worried about this kind of stuff instead of just, working within the salary cap, which is already hard enough to build a championship team. You also have to work within the constraints of your owners not having enough money to even pay a salary cap. So it's certainly a conversation that I'm sure we're going to have a lot on Chatterbox Bengals all throughout the offseason, whether or not to pay T. Higgins, certainly not the last time. We'll talk about that, I am sure. But backdoor, we talked about it, Craig. There's a chance they have life. But that's not the main thing I wanted to talk about here. I wanted to put something else out there.
Just real quick. Let's put okay. Before we get to the playoff scenario?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So today, Joe Burrow got hurt. Added the knee sleeve, came out of the game. We had the chat about a 50-50 split. Half the chat was saying that as long as there's a mathematical chance to make the playoffs, there cannot be a conversation about benching Joe Burrow. That means continuing forward after winning this game, we still have life. We're at, a 3% chance now? So as long as there's a mathematical chance, a lot of our listeners were saying, you cannot bench Joe Burrow. So that back door is still technically open. They're saying you can't bench him. In my opinion, you're fighting a massive uphill fight. If that knee's banged up at all going into next week, you got to sit him the rest of the year. You have to. You can't risk getting him hurt. He looked fine out there. He was running around. He made a couple great throws. He looked fine. That's also with adrenaline in the middle of a football game. If he's banged up this week, he cannot play the rest of the year. He can't fight through it. You have to protect him from himself. I feel pretty strongly about that.
Wow. I'm not sure I was ready for that from you, especially as someone who traditionally, and by traditionally, I mean every week for the last 15 weeks, has been very strongly on the Bengals playoff train. And so, look, I agree with you that it's really difficult to look at this and say, okay, the Bengals at this point have maybe a 3% chance of making the playoffs. And maybe that's true, maybe that's not. Depending on which model you look at, obviously the number changes. First and foremost, and this is really, I think, the most important thing in this whole conversation. It doesn't really matter what you think is right. It doesn't matter what you think the Bengals should do. The real question is, what is Joe Burrow going to allow them to do? Yeah. And whether you want to act like Zach Taylor has the power to say, okay, Joe, if you're not 100%, we're not playing you. It doesn't matter. Joe Burrow is going to make that decision, and we all know the competitor that Joe Burrow is, and Joe Burrow is not going to allow Zach Taylor to sit him down just because he's not 100%, because I hate to break it to you, during an NFL season, there's not a single player in the NFL that's 100% after preseason week 1. So for Joe Burrow to have a knee sleeve on, and we don't know the extent of what happened or how he got twisted up or what happened. I would have thought that his neck would be hurting more than his knee would be after that ridiculous face mask on call. But I don't think there's any world where Joe Burrow allows Zach Taylor to sit him down. And Joe Burrow even said after, the game tonight that, I'm sure I'll be sore tomorrow, but we'll get it taken care of and it's all good. His,
he made
his
it
classic,
pretty clear
it's
he's
all
not
good.
sitting. He made that pretty clear.
Yeah.
Him and Jamar both made it pretty clear over the weekend that they were going to play their hearts out the rest of the season because they had stuff that they were playing for that was important to them. That's bigger than just win-loss. And I think that is important as well. I think a lot of people want these players to focus on, winning the games. When you're 4-8, they want them to hang their head and be upset and just, not be people. I think these guys are athletes. They're competitors. They're fighting for stuff. And when you're 4-8, you have to move those goalposts a little bit. And you got to fight for something else. You got to put something on your mirror, like Jamar Chase said. And I think having goals on your mirror, you gets you up in the morning. It gets you to fight for something. And if Jamar Chase is going to fight for the Triple Crown, if Joe Burrow is going to fight for some franchise records and they want to, that's completely fine, and I'm completely fine with that. But at some point, my argument, I've been fine with that the whole time if the argument is benching a fully healthy Joe Burrow. I'm completely fine with that. You let him do whatever he wants. If there's an injury, and I'm not even talking about something crazy serious, if there's an injury, Zach Taylor needs to be the coach. Players want to play. That's how players work. They have to protect him because you're going to chase numbers in a season that any player would want to chase. You're going to chase numbers in a season and then potentially cost your chance at chasing a ring the next year. I just can't wrap my head around it. But hopefully we get to Monday. He's not even on the injury report and everything's good to go and we're not having this conversation.
Well, we know that won't happen because he'll be on the injury report for his wrist, if nothing else.
The knee is not on the injury report.
If you haven't seen Joe Burrow after the game was, walking with apparently a noticeable limp, says his knee won't prevent him from playing though. Quote, it's nothing crazy. Landed on it a couple times, probably a bursa. It'll be sore. We'll see. A bursa basically is the fluid sac around your tendons that helps like protect it. And if you fall on it multiple times, it can kind of get inflamed and swell up. Realistically, with the type of medical attention that he's going to be able to get, even if he's not 100%, he's going to be pretty dang close to it by the time he gets to next week. That's not going to be something that, sticks around and affects him for multiple weeks. Realistically, he might be a little slow next week, but I don't think it's going to be to the point where, he has to sit. And then more importantly is I don't think it's something that you're going to be able to then injure worse, right? And that's always one of the questions when you're talking about injuries is it something that can get worse? And right, he's probably going to go have an MRI tomorrow, make sure that what he thinks it is exactly what it is, and that's a bursa. But if you do come back and it's ligament damage of some sort or some sort of other injury, then certainly there will be a conversation around whether or not he needs to think about sitting it down. And I'm sure he'll be a limited participant each day this week heading into next week, but I don't think that's something that Joe's going to allow to happen.
Yeah, and you're right.
The positive side is that you've got the Tennessee Titans next week. So, knock on wood, Jake Browning may be able to beat the Tennessee Titans, but why risk it?
Could
Especially
Jake Browning lose
if
the
you're
Tennessee
talking
Titans on purpose.
Stop it. Stop it.
No, we're alive. Now that we won this game, draft picks are out the window because we can't pick high enough that it matters. So now we might as well just win because it's fun. Because if we lost this game, it was going to be full draft zone all the way because there would have been a real avenue to pick pretty high. But now that you win this one, you're in a pretty bad spot in terms of draft. You're in a good spot in terms of actually winning games and playing for things that competitors play for. But losers like me, we're already looking at the draft, and this one kind of cooks the draft position. So now we're playing for it all. We're back into it, and that 3% is what we're holding on to. I guess I am. Craig, are you still holding on to the 3%? Give me a little love for the 3%.
No, I'm not holding on to the 3% because
not.
this team time and time again has let me down. And every time I want to hold on to the 3% or the 33% or the whatever percent chance it is that given week, I get let down over and over and over again. And I can't continue to do it. I won't continue to do it. The next time you hear me talking about the Bengals in the 2024 playoffs will be if they find their way in. Even if we go into week 18 needing only a win and no other help, I'm not gonna do it.
I'm gonna edit the Chatterbox Bengals schedule and make us record a pregame show for that one. So you have to talk about the playoff picture before we win.
All right. So here's what I was gonna ask you before. Let's drop the Elliott rearing bit. Are you actually in or out on this Bengals playoff run?
I don't think the Bengals are going to
Do you actually think there's a chance? Okay.
No, I don't think the Bengals are going to make the playoffs. But, like I said, without losing tonight, there's nothing else to root for. There's no draft to root for anymore winning tonight. So I'm going to choose to root for that until they're done. I think that's just kind of where I'm at right now. As long as there's a number on NewYorkTimes.com, I'm going to choose to root for that. And if I can talk myself into believing it from 10A to 12P every day, Monday through Friday, and then for 1 hour on Tuesday and Thursday nights, then that's fine by me because I've been doing a decent job so far. But yeah, look, I'm in at this point. I'm in at least for the next 2 weeks where we can keep that number above 0 and hopefully beat some bad teams and maybe have a little fun. Let's just have a couple weeks of fun. We play 3 weeks of bad teams. If we're out of the playoffs, we're out of the playoffs. Maybe there's bigger things here. Let's just have fun. Let's have Joe Burrow go throw for 300 against the Titans. Who cares if we win 45-42? Let's just have fun. This has been a fun season for a lot of teams. This season's been killed by the expectations of the preseason. How many teams picking where we're picking in the draft right now would kill to have this offensive season? Most teams that are 4-8, it's excruciating to watch. Now, does it kill us in a new way every single game, how the Bengals find a way to lose? Yes. But this might be one of the most exciting 4-8, 5-8 teams to watch, maybe in the history of the NFL. Because every single week, they do something new. And you know their star players are going to deliver. And at the end of the day, that's what we turn the game on for. Joe Buck said it today before the game. He goes, these two defenses stink. But at least we have Joe Burrow, because when Joe Burrow's on prime time, you know it's going to be a good one. And I think that's kind of how the whole league feels at this point. I think whether people want to admit it or not, they'd appreciate the Bengals to be a little bit better, because you'd like to see Joe Burrow not flexed out of prime time like he was in a couple weeks. Because love him or hate him, you certainly like watching 9-1 play. So I think the whole league's going to be in a better spot when the Bengals can figure this out a little bit.
I know you weren't watching the Simpsons broadcast tonight, but there were a couple classics that came out of it tonight. First of all, Mina Kimes on the commentary at one point said, "I'm not really sure how this is possible, but the Bengals defense both sucks and blows."
Oh, kids show, Mina. Kids show.
Kids show, Mina.
Oh my!
On the Simpsons broadcast, nonetheless.
That's crazy.
And at halftime, Jacob, you know what they showed? They showed Krusty the Clown giving the halftime speech to the Bengals, which I'm
that
sure was
screenshot's not going to be good
at all.
Oh no, I'm going to see that on Twitter for sure.
Oh yeah, it's all over Twitter already. Surprised you haven't. No. Look, a couple of classics coming out of the Simpsons broadcast for sure. We're gonna be breaking down all this film. You think we're going to have it ready for tomorrow, Jacob? We must, because we got a show.
That's what I was wondering. I was going to save that till after we cut this sucker, but I was going to say, are we going to have this for tomorrow? We'll see. We'll do what we can.
Yeah, we'll have it.
We'll get you
it together, right?
The greatest Tuesday show right after a Monday Night Football game that you've ever seen from Chatterbox Bengals, because I'm pretty sure we played Monday Night Football earlier this year against the Commanders. We did it then. So we'll be fine. Right?
I think I saw a tweet earlier that said the Bengals have won 2 road Monday Night Football games for the first time in their franchise history this year, because they beat the Giants on Monday Night Football earlier this year.
Giants, yeah.
The Commanders was a Monday Night Football game as well, but we lost that one.
And it wasn't
the Giants were also on Monday night. Yeah. But the Giants was a road Monday night that we won. So up to 2. I also saw this really good tweet from a comedian, Mark Shalafu. Watching the Bengals is like watching the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals on the same team.
That's a good one. I think that's the perfect summation of this Bengals season. I think that's a good sentiment to leave this one on. Bengals get a win. Vibes are high tonight. We had a fun post-game show for the first time in a while, and man, that does feel good. It always feels good to have a win. You could be 2% to go to the playoffs or not. Winning a game always feels good. I could talk about rooting for the draft all day, every day. As soon as that ball's kicked off, I can't help but root for the Bengals to win. It's just Something about it. But thank you, Craig, for joining me as always. Thank you to everyone in the chat for sticking around throughout the game. Always means a little bit more when you guys are hanging out with us this late at night. We appreciate everyone that supports us. You let us do it. It's a lot of fun. Hooday, and we'll catch you tomorrow night. Back-to-back Chatterbox Bengals. Yippee!